It started with a gate, a brand new, steel-reinforced HOA gate that went up without warning on the only access road to my grandpa's lakeside cabin. A bold, gleaming structure complete with keypad entry, camera surveillance, and a shiny private sign in gold lettering. My grandpa, Ernest Wallace, had lived on that land for 30 years long before there was an HOA. He built the cabin with his own hands, a place where he and my late grandma Eleanor watched countless sunrises. But now, a gate blocked the gravel road like he was a trespasser on his own property. The letter arrived 2 days later. Due to updated zoning and road use agreements, continued access to Lot 17 will require HOA compliance. It wasn't signed, but everyone knew who was behind it. Lori Haywood, the new HOA president with a reputation for power plays. My grandpa wasn't confrontational by nature, but this wasn't just about a gate. This was about legacy, loss, and the promise he made to Eleanor before she passed too, never let anyone take away their piece of peace. So he drove to the HOA office, papers and hand-deed copies, historic surveys, old county road agreements. But Lori wasn't interested in history. "We're modernizing," she said with a tight smile. "Everyone must comply." When he mentioned that the road existed decades before the HOA was formed, she raised an eyebrow. Then maybe it's time for new roads and new owners. That was the day Ernest knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a takeover. Then came the sign. Sunrise Fishing Club. AOA members only. Small, but loud in meaning. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. This wasn't just about road access. Lori wanted total control over the lakefront, transforming it into a private playground for her elite friends. Anyone who didn't fit her vision of lakefront perfection? Pushed out. My grandpa saw it clearly now. This wasn't petty politics. It was a strategic purge. That evening, he sat in his chair, looked at Eleanor's photo, and whispered, "Well, honey, looks like your husband's about to get into the biggest fight of his life." Sunday morning, Doug Callahan rode up to the cabin. A 45-year-old carpenter and widower, Doug had bonded with my grandpa over loss and lake stories. "Ernest," he said, tying off his boat, "I went to that mixer. You need to know what Lori's really planning. She wasn't stopping at cutting off access. She was going after legacy eyes, the long-time lakefront owners. Her plan? Use obscure HOA rules to force them to sell cheap, then have her developer buddies swoop in. It was gentrification masked as community growth, and it was working, but not for long. That afternoon, my grandpa dove into his file's original lake maps, deeds, county permits. After hours of combing old legal language, he found it. A clause buried in a 1963 development document. Lakefront property owners retain perpetual rights to construct reasonable recreational facilities. He circled it in red ink. Then he called Doug. "You ever build a pier before?" Doug smiled. "I've built everything but a pier. Let's fix that." That night, Eleanor's words echoed in Ernest's mind. "See? Reading the fine print saves your butt." And this time, it might just save his land. With the clause in hand and Doug on board, Grandpa went full throttle. Together, they drew up blueprints. It wouldn't just be a dock, it would be the Eleanor Memorial Fishing Pier. He filed permits, submitted environmental assessments, and paid every required fee himself. HOA leadership watched in silence as county officials approved the plans. It was legal. It was brilliant. It was happening. When the first truckload of lumber arrived, Lori stood across the road, arms folded, seething. Grandpa tipped his hat to her. She turned and stormed off. Construction began fast. Doug and his crew laid out the base pilings, hammering into solid bedrock like they were building a fortress. The whole thing had Eleanor's spirit in it, strong, unwavering, built to last. Neighbors started watching, asking questions. Some even offered help. Lori filed 3 noise complaints in 2 weeks. All dismissed. The sheriff himself stopped by one day, shook Grandpa's hand, and said, "Heard about the fight. Looks like you're winning it the right way." Grandpa just smiled and got back to work. Lori wasn't done. She called for an emergency HOA meeting. "This pier threatens our property values," she shouted, waving a photo of the construction. But even her loyal members hesitated. Her paranoia was showing. "He has permits," one board member whispered. "He's not breaking any law." Lori's voice trembled. "Then we change the rules." But it was too late. Residents had started siding with Grandpa. His quiet defiance was louder than all her outrage. That week, the HOA newsletter had no mention of her pier protest. Just a picture of Grandpa hauling timber. Caption, "Progress at the lake." As the pier reached 100 feet, it entered the HOA's prized fishing zone, the spot they wanted, reserved for their exclusive club. That's when Lori got desperate. She filed an anonymous tip alleging unsafe construction. County inspectors rolled in, expecting chaos. What they found instead? Perfection. Doug's crew explained every code, every bolt, every anchor. The inspector said, "This isn't just compliant, it's exemplary." But then he turned around and asked a question Lori hadn't prepared for. "When were permits filed for your dock and lighting, ma'am?" That silence changed everything. The inspector's audit exposed everything. Unpermitted HOA structures, years of violations, daily fines pending, her leadership collapsing. Board members stepped back. Homeowners panicked, knowing their dues might now cover thousands in legal costs. One neighbor said, "She threw stones from a glass house." The community's faith shifted instantly. When reporters came, Grandpa stood in flannel and boots, saying, "I just want everyone treated fairly." Meanwhile, Lori hid behind tinted windows, and the pier? It kept rising, beam by beam, very plank, another nail in the coffin of HOA corruption.